Welcome to this IDMonSite. I think and I hope we are live now on our YouTube channel. My name is Sophia Beiter. I'm a research associate at the IDM, and I want to very warmly welcome you to this IDMonSite on the latest parliamentary elections in Bulgaria. We have a distinguished speaker with us here today, whom I will introduce in a minute. The IDMonSite is a format of the Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe, where we talk and discuss with experts based in the region current developments in the countries of our region. And I'm very happy to discuss today the Bulgarian parliamentary elections that happened last Sunday. I will introduce our speaker first, then afterwards I will give just a very brief overview of the election results so that we are all on the same page for the following discussion. And then the discussion with our speaker follows. You will also have the chance to ask questions in the YouTube chat. And I actually also encourage you to ask questions if you have any in the YouTube chat. Yeah. So now to our guest, I want to welcome Ambassador Elena Poptodorova. She is Vice President and founding member of the Atlantic Club of Bulgaria. She is Director for Euro-Atlantic Affairs, as well as the Free Seas Initiative National Program of the Atlantic Club of Bulgaria. And she was also ambassador to the US from 2002 to 2008 and from 2010 to 2016. And Elena Poptodorova was also a member of Parliament in Bulgaria from 1990 to 2001. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. I know the Institute and it's always happy to engage with you.
Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Before we move on, as I said, I just very briefly want to give an overview of the election results. On the 27th of October, parliamentary elections took place in Bulgaria. The Bulgarians elected the 240 members of the National Assembly. And this was the seventh election since April 2021, and also the second election in 2024. The last election took place on the 9th of June, together with the EU Parliament elections. And it was tried to form a government. The mandates went to the GERB-SDS, the party with most of the votes, the DPS, the second party, and the ITN. But no government was formed in the end, and that's why Bulgaria had another round of parliamentary elections last Sunday. I also hope my screen is visible and you can see that, because I'm showing now the election results. So the turnout was low, but actually maybe even a bit higher than expected, with almost 39% turnout, which is still, of course, very low. And then the election results, you can see now here on this chart. So this data is still from last evening, and as I saw just before the event, I think there is not 9 parties in the next parliament, but it will only be 8. Because Velicie will not make it, apparently. When I made this presentation last evening, only 99% of the votes were counted. So apparently it changed a little bit, because apparently now Velicie only has 3.9% and therefore probably will not make the threshold over the 4% to have seats in the parliament. The largest party with the most votes was again in this election GERB-SDS, the center-right party led by Boyko Borisov with around 26% of the votes. Boyko Borisov led the country for around 10 years before he was voted out of office in 2021. And since then, basically no real stable regular government could be formed. But still, GERB is the party with the most votes in the last election and also in this election, as we can see. On the second place is PPDB, or We Continue to Change, Democratic Bulgaria, with 14%. GERB, SDS, and PPDB were together in the last government before the June elections. So after the elections in 2023, they agreed to form a government together with a system of rotating prime ministers. At first, Nikolai Denkov from PPDB became prime minister, and after 9 months, he was supposed to hand over to Maria Gabriel from GERB SDS. He resigned also as planned, but then the two parties could not agree on certain ministries, and the government collapsed, and there were the new elections in June. On the third place, we have, so PPDB is the more said to be more the reformist liberal party, pro-European. Vazraždane then in the third place with around 13%. They are pro-Russian and far-right. They also joined in the European Parliament the new group of Europe of Sovereign Nations, where also the AfD is, the German Alternative für Deutschland. And then on place 4 and 6 are actually two new parties, or better said, they are not really new parties, but one party that split into two, the DPS New Start with around 11%, and the Alliance for Rights and Freedoms with around 7.5%. They were before the DPS, the Movement for Rights and Freedom, traditionally the party for the Turkish minority. But they also have a very influential leader, Dilan Pevski, who is a businessman and politician, and he's also said to be highly involved in corruption. He's sanctioned under the Magnitsky Act in the US and the UK. And after the last elections in June, the DPS came second. But they had internal problems because one other leader, Ahmed Dogan, was opposed to the formation of a GERB-led government, while Dilan Pevski supported it more. In the end, it didn't come to a government, but this party split, and now there are two new parties. Maybe we'll also hear more about that during our discussion. Then we have the BSP, the Socialist Party, with around 7.5%, the ITN, a populist party, with 6.8%. Then a new party will probably get into the government, or will get into government, Moral Unity and Honor, which is a far-right nationalist party and founded by the former sports minister, Radostin Vasiljev. They have around 4.6%. And as I said, Velice, they made it into the last parliament, but apparently now they will not have enough votes. This is just a very brief comparison with the polls. The results were not so surprising, but maybe also our speaker can tell us more about that afterwards. But yeah, the polls indicated similar results, basically. And this is just a comparison with the last election results from June 2024, where you can see that the DPS is still one party and on second place, and now they split, as I said. And that was mostly it, just a very brief summary for the beginning of our discussion. And now I'm very happy to hear the insights of Elena Poptodorova. And my first question would actually be, we saw now a lot of numbers, so maybe my first question would be a bit different. What was the atmosphere in Bulgaria ahead of these elections? Are people, can one feel the tiredness of people regarding elections, or are they still motivated to go to elections?
You did a very good summary of what the results are, but they we will talk afterwards about what they lead to or do not lead to. The atmosphere before this election was yes, a fatigue of annoyance, maybe that's a better word even to use, annoyance with this total incapacity, impotency of political parties to work out a political solution. To be honest, I feared a worse turnout, lower numbers. I thought it will be around 30%, and having almost 10% on top is kind of encouraging, which means it does have a political connotation or implication. It means that people are not so tired of the physical act of voting, but tired with as I said, with the impotency of politicians and of political parties, because it was kind of a when you come to think of it, as if some kind of a disease, political contamination spread out among parties, especially with the movement for rights and freedoms, the Socialist Party. Things are obviously not as smooth as they want to appear within the party of what is it in English? We continue the change or whatever, and democratic Bulgaria. So there is a kind of a general shake-up in the political establishment, which voters do feel quite acutely. So that was probably the attitude, not so much to the very act of voting, and I'm happy to say that. That's good. As indeed with the political landscape we have to address one way or another.
Thank you. Yeah, I read before the elections, I read an article where Dimitar Ganev commented that, so that's a quote, he said, "We are experiencing the most serious crisis since 1989. Would you agree with that quote?
The way he said it, I don't. I think there is something he misses here. He should have said the most serious political crisis. And that may have rung true, because speaking of crisis, I would like to recall 96, end of 96, early 97, which was a really catastrophe, economic catastrophe, where when the UDF took power in 97, and when then President Stoyanov had to practically admonish the Socialist Party against their desire to take to continue ruling. So that was a huge crisis. There were riots in the streets, etc. But in terms of the political system, that's what he means, and I'm sure he does, because I've listened to him on other occasions. So we have to limit this to a political crisis. Otherwise, Bulgaria's economic numbers are not bad at all. Limiting ourselves to the political crisis, yes, this is true. Not being able to form a government in so many successive attempts does provoke questions about the solidity of the constitutional order even. This is why some new ideas have floated about changing the constitution with and replacing parliamentary republic with presidential rule. In other words, this attempt of a strong hand, which leads also to other kind of thoughts which are to be identified within some political parties, the desire for a strong hand, more authoritarian rule, in order to be able to set some order and some predictability even more in the political process. This is what happened these last couple of years, and it has been insane, really. It has been literally insane. Of course, I'm not saying that making or forming a government at any cost would have survived long enough. We might have ended in a similar situation, but the fact of not being able to even come up with a government, that's really extremely worrisome. So we'll see what happens now.
Thank you. Yeah, we maybe go back later also a bit to this wish for a stronger hand or more authoritarian rule. But first, let's maybe go back to the concrete results. So what do you think? I mean, only two of the last six, only two of the last six elections led to the formation of a government. So what do you see? How will this government formation work out? Will there be a government or not? And maybe also, was there anything surprising to you regarding the results of this election?
Let's start with the results. Yes and no, to be honest. Nobody had any doubts about how the first ones will come out, the obvious ones, so to say, to make it into parliament. The big kind of intrigue to me was who's number two, as it was in the previous election. Again, it was a very tight race between the We Continue the Change, Democratic Bulgaria, and Revival, Renaissance, whatever Vazraždane like to call themselves. And we had again a similar situation, which I'm not saying it's surprising, but it was really unnerving because it was the countdown. It came down to the very last moment. I mean, and the difference is not that big. So this was one of the important characteristics. The other one, of course, was the last two parties that made it into parliament. To be honest, I didn't expect them to make it. And that, again, raises other questions about social media, about how do you secure votes, not only through the ballot box, but also through other stimuli, quote unquote. So because there was no logical reason for Match to make it after they have just 2 months of political life, or Velice, the grandeur, how would you call themselves? Greatness, grandeur, whatever, something really great. And I know that what they did last time, it was used extensively, almost abuse of social networks. And as I say, this raises a very serious, big issue, not just for Bulgaria, but everywhere, because we can find similarities in other places as well. How do we employ social media in the political process? So anyway, that was more or less the surprise. The last two parties, and I'm not unhappy that Greatness eventually didn't get those. Somebody said 12 votes. I don't know. It can easily be even 2 votes. I don't know. But it's 3.99 versus the 4.01 which they had until yesterday morning. So that was the surprise to me.
Thank you. Yeah, and now to the potential formation of a new government. I think Borisov said he does not want to have a coalition with Vazraždane, but he would talk with all other parties. But I'm not sure We Continue to Change Democratic Bulgaria would repeat a government together with GERB. So what do you think? What are the prospects for forming a government?
Well, I hope everybody learned their lessons from the past, because it was a stupid collapse of a government which was formed. The last one was formed with a lot of compromise, a lot of prices to be paid, mostly by we continue the change. But listen, I have to be perfectly honest here. We continue the change, and I'm not saying democratic Bulgaria. I make this distinction, which is more and more accentuated lately. These are different political entities, different political history, different political skills, if you wish. I'm sorry to say, but we continue the change, continue to behave sometimes totally either irrationally or naively or not skillfully enough in politics, what isn't needed in politics. So the way they acted in the past kind of legislature when we had the last government was not well thought out. Also, of course, GERB made good use of this so that eventually they had to part company. And I believe and I hope that this time the figure, the personality of an interior minister will not be the divisive issue which earlier on practically provoked and blocked the rotation. I hope this time it won't be a prosecutor general who will be the divisive issue, because this is obviously hugely important to GERB in particular and to Mr. Borisov. So that's the big question. And again, we have the elephant in the room, Mr. Peevski, who has always managed to be part of any government kind of conjuncture, any government setup, not directly necessarily, but even more influentially. So that's the big question. Will Mr. Borisov be able to emancipate himself and his party from any desires which Mr. Peevski may have, especially with regard to the judiciary? So the judiciary will definitely be part of a negotiation which GERB and We Continue the Change Democratic Bulgaria will have to hold. The other thing which I think both parties learned is that they have to have a written coalition agreement, because otherwise it's all hearsay. Whoever went to somebody's office and met with I don't know who, so it's all kind of a folk tales almost about how the previous government was formed, not on the basis of a strictly scripted and well-founded agreement, a coalition agreement between the two parties. So they will obviously have to go through that if they arrive at a point when they're ready to discuss a coalition. Definitely a number 3 is needed. And again, that's a question mark to me. There are just 2 options. It's the BSP, the Socialist Party, which did participate once, and then there is ITN, that there is such a nation, who are plausible, possible third partner in a government. But what I feel, and everybody says that, so I'm not the only one, it will be very, very damaging if they do not make a government this time. And I think Mr. Borisov realizes that much, although he may be making different statements that he does state, yes, we're ready to do any compromise. Then another statement goes, we have our own program, we put it on the table, it is on this program that we may talk about a government. So we will see how that evolves. There is one absolutely, I'll call it unfortunate, because I don't want to call it stupid, kind of fear, probably, which somehow floats in the air, And this is about what the elections in Washington will come about. Because since we obviously and logically discuss Mr. Borisov, he's the person who has to make a government, to negotiate. And I think it's so complicated. He actually has three fears, which he somehow needs to balance and somehow mix, I don't know, or avoid. Of course, he doesn't want to go openly in government with Mr. Peevski. That's one serious fear. The other fear is that if he's not very happy also with we continue the change in democratic Bulgaria, because last time they somehow took over and they took more power, even more power that they could consume themselves. They couldn't handle the political power they managed to get. And I don't think Mr. Borisov would like to see this repeated again by yielding too much power. Hence those statements that he makes. And then the other fear is obviously new elections. He knows that it will be totally destructive for him personally, but also for the party. For I don't know which fourth time is it, he consistently is unable to form a government. So that's why I believe it will all happen. Now, what I hope that's not an argument in his head to drill the ball until the elections on November the 5th. There is this, I would call it irrational, probably, expectation that if President Trump gets into the Oval Office, that will sort out all his woes and all his political worries here. That, but I don't believe that, and I think it's not a political argument. A solid leader, political leader, should even contemplate. But once the official results are confirmed by the Electoral Committee and the new parliament is convened, they will have to go immediately to talks, even earlier, because the president will then invite them by constitution to start the ball rolling.
Yeah. And do you think that Borisov will stay true to his claim that he will not form a government with Vasrashane, with the pro-Russian far-right party?
That's a question that is being asked continuously. And this is why it was so important who will be number 2 and number 3. And this is probably where the US election comes into play. I think he will, yeah, but he will formally stick to what he said, but we don't know how support in voting may come when votes come in the chamber. So there is still kind of a sub-question to the main question of an official kind of government arrangement. But I don't think Vasrashane themselves are eager to participate. I think that they will use their very good election result and seats in parliament to play a game with voting. So they will find and will be looking for like-minded parliamentarians to go against, to oppose a vote, or to support a vote that goes along with their own views. So pro-Russia votes will definitely be supported by Vasrashane, and they may be used for that in a different guise, in a kind of a more acceptable, probably, formula, but leading down to legislation that may favor less European, less Western, so to say, norm, against favoring a norm, a legislative norm that may benefit Russia one way or another. That Razrajane may do easily, and they will be doing it in Parliament.
Thank you. Let's maybe go back a bit to what you mentioned already earlier, the wish for a strong hand. So I looked at a few surveys, and one survey indicated that only 10% of Bulgarians trust the integrity of their elections, which was in 2022 to 2023, apparently the lowest level even globally. And also the trust in the judicial system is very low. And so maybe the two questions would be, what steps would be needed to restore this public trust and public trust in state institutions, but also due to this low trust and this political instability, does Bulgaria face the risk of more autocratic forces gaining influence in the coming months or years?
I came here at the very last minute. It was almost a photo finish for our discussion, because I was speaking at a conference dedicated to media literacy. And disinformation, of course, was a major part of it, the bigger part of it. So what has been happening is a very powerful effect on public kind of comments taken up by interested parties about the unreliable electoral system in Bulgaria, about the purchased vote, about the corporate vote. So we've been listening all the time about how unfair and unreliable the election will be. And this is not the first time it's happening. It's happened even earlier. When you come to numbers, and somebody did of our NGO organizations, yes, of course there is, which is, it's a shame. It's shameful to have this thing. But till it does not, the percentage of supposedly purchased vote, approximately calculated, does not have a decisive impact on the outcome of the result. However, this is something which is not being explained in numbers and objectively, but people are led to believe that this is it, as if most of the votes are acquired through that means. I mean, they're purchased or corporate vote. So that's one thing. While the system may not be perfect, I mean, it may not deliver perfection, but it's not necessarily so very much flawed. Yes, there were some instances, but if they show them on TV, it means that they're not as many as some would like to tell them. In some small villages, there may be some changes. I mean, right away changing numbers in the protocols, but it happened, I think, in one or two places, and that was shown on TV, because this time there was total scrutiny of the way the electoral committees perform in different places. And there may be some technical things with the machines. The other thing, which was made intentionally beginning from 2 or 3 elections back, to install distrust in the machine vote. That of course it's flawed, because somebody may go there, may fix something, and that can upset the entire system. So there was this intentional effort at sowing distrust a priori before even the vote started. So that's one thing that happened, and it's very, very unfortunate. I'm really sorry that that's prevailing feeling among Bulgarians. But that does go together with the low trust in the judiciary, in the judicial system, because we've never had, there were instances and there were people arrested and indicted about the purchase of votes. Nothing happened. But that's not the only place and the only case where the judiciary does not deliver. There is the general sense, and unfortunately I share it too, that it doesn't deliver. Full stop. There are a number of cases which are well known to the public, due also to investigative journalism, and nothing happens. Nobody of the especially political kind of persons suspected of wrongdoings are never brought to justice. And that all kind of couples together about this distrust. And it's widely shared, unfortunately, especially about the judiciary. And this is why I say again, I'm happy that people went out 10% more and did vote. Yeah. So how it will be remedied? Through a reform of the judiciary, which has been the hardest reform to carry out. And every political kind of constellation, they bend over backwards to secure that they have a loyal judiciary, which is, I don't know, it's disgusting, but that's the case. And I'll tell you, I'm going back 35 years ago when we had the Grand National Assembly and when we voted the Constitution. I was in Parliament at the time. And I remember the naive urge to change the political system, to do away with this notorious Article number 1, which said that the Communist Party is the total leader. And when we did that, we were so happy. We did touch the political system. We got the multi-party system. We got the free market economy, the market economy kind of principles. Nobody touched the judiciary. We didn't touch it. It was actually literally transported from the Vyshinsky, from the Soviet times. Vyshinsky is a notorious prosecutor general of the Soviet Union, and that he did the Soviet legislation. So it was literally moved on to continue because we thought, and I'll tell you how, well, some of us were naive. Others were very, very calculative, and they knew, and those were the kind of people who had a stronger say. This is the division of powers. Judiciary should stay independent. And yes, they did stay independent for such a long time, right before we started negotiations with NATO and the EU for membership there, when it was put into question, which was 10 years later, even more, 13, 12 years later. And in the meantime, all these connections, all these octopus-like kind of networks only thrived. So that's a very big question, very serious question. And this is why democratic Bulgaria are so insistent on the judicial reform. So once it happens, we may only begin to redress the balance and to begin the build-up of an independent judiciary.
Mm-hmm. And as you also talked about the purchased votes and interference in the elections, I would also maybe have a question about Russian interference or Russian disinformation, because Bulgarians, some percentage of the public is still receptive to Russian disinformation. I found a study that said that in 2024, basically nearly equal percentage of Bulgarians view both Russia and the USA as security threats to Bulgaria. So what role would you say thus, or did Russian interference and disinformation play in the elections?
Huge role. not only for the elections, but also on issues which need to be resolved by Bulgaria. And I'll give you immediately an example with our coal mines, which are part of the Green Deal. Okay, the Green Deal may need some perfection, some fixing up, but the fact that our coal mines are in a dire state, they consume, they're labor intensive, they're energy intensive, they're resource intensive, and I mean, it's so heavily subsidized, and yet nobody would tell the truth to these people out there. So every time there is an attempt at changing the energy mix through the coal by closing, and it's closing them down in 15 years time, not even earlier, beginning in 10 years, then moving on to 15 years. But there is this attempt to block it, and it's being blocked so far, which doesn't happen without that kind of interference. I'm mentioning just one example, but we can do all the rest. We can do LGBT, we can do religious issues with the Orthodox Church. Ukraine is there. Every contentious issue is practically heavily influenced by Russian outlets, Russian posts in social media or anything. And there is because we never carried out the true discussion of Russia's role in Bulgarian history. I'm not saying that Bulgaria should be anti-Russian. Bulgaria must be realistic. And I remember we had this first and last discussion in the Bulgarian parliament on relations with Russia. It was held in 1997. Never again this topic was touched as a public discussion, as a general discussion of politicians about how these relations develop. Even less so after the annexation of the Crimea or the war in Ukraine. So this remains kind of a hot potato, and nobody dares touch it to the very root of the problem. But so I'm saying we should not be anti-Russian. We should emancipate ourselves to the extent, to the degree of a really truly independent country, which has made its choices, geopolitical, geostrategic choices, and is following its path. We don't want to be enemies with Russia. We just want to be let live. And this doesn't happen because of that continuous interference. Russia believes we are part of that sphere of influence. She has always claimed to be its own kind of vassal area that has to just to follow orders and follow instructions. And Bulgaria is worse out than any other East European country. That's the problem. And that's statistically also proven that Russian propaganda here seems to be most effective, or Russian disinformation or fake news, whatever you call it. Yeah. And that can only happen, again, through a political process, political discussion that will explain realities to Bulgarians, both about, as I say, past history, about present day attitudes and behavior. But it's so, again, so unfortunate, I'll use this word, that Russia has always been a dividing line, an abyss even in Bulgarian society. And it started even since not last, but the century before, the late 1800s. It has always been the same in different kind of ways and manifestations, but it has always been like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Bulgaria-Russia relations to maybe also Bulgaria-EU relations, how does this political instability also affect, the relations to the EU, but also, regarding EU funds, also the Schengen accession and the accession to the Eurozone?
It affects everything, not just Europe. It's literally everything, because unless relations with North Macedonia, even, if we do not have a trustworthy, legitimate government, in the sense that it is a political government, not a caretaker government, everybody will just wait. We are put on the back burner. That's the worry that I have. Everybody says, yeah, we'll wait till you finally have your government. We know that other countries may have lingered a while before they formed government. I remember Belgium once, I don't know, they went over a year or close to 2 years before they had a government, but they didn't have 7 elections in a row. Heading in for an eighth election, maybe. This is still a question mark. While in this case, this repetitiveness of elections, that's what's so worrisome. Somebody says, well, the Italians, I know, I've worked in Italy, I know quite well the scene there. Yes, they kept changing governments every the average life cycle was 6 months at a time, I remember. That was pre-1990. But they didn't have elections every 6 months. Okay, change governments. If they don't do well, change them. But at least you should have a solid political system to do that. So that's the attitude also of European countries. They may, you know what, they start by being understanding, then they move to being wondering and perplexed, and now they probably will be dismissive, and this is what I fear. I don't want our allies and partners to be dismissive of Bulgaria, which they are on the border of becoming if we continue down the same downward slide.
Yeah. Thank you. We also have a question from the YouTube chat. So I will ask that one now. The question is, how is this political instability affecting the daily lives of Bulgarian citizens and society as a whole?
I'm sorry, can I just use 1 second? I need to just open a door here, and I'll be right back. Sorry about it.
No problem.
I'm back with you. You know what? The daily lives, and thank you for giving me this little kind of moment. You know what? It's not a one-way answer, because there are those who lead their usual lives. As I'm saying, the numbers of GDP are not bad. Inflation is going down. Yes, we would have liked to see bigger growth, which is not as big as it was estimated, but there is the routine kind of life which continues. So I'm afraid that the bigger drama is practically among the political parties and among political leaders, because in your usual routine, in your daily routine, you do not always translate the big political objectives to a daily occurrence. Let's say the Schengen, if we take Schengen, that directly affects the lives of people. And that's why we oftentimes have either truck drivers or other unions that will react, and they will go to protest, or agricultural workers. So it does affect the life of special professional communities. On the other hand, there are those who just continue a usual routine. So it's a mix, but there is this general feeling that Bulgaria is failing. And oftentimes it's even unfair. It may even go more, how should I say, more negatively than it actually is. Bulgaria is not exactly failing in everything, but the general sense is, oh yeah, Schengen, we don't get Schengen. Oh yes, of course, the Green Deal, it will actually send people jobless in the streets. Or Eurozone, we want it. No, we don't want it. The Eurozone is another area where foreign interference, Russian interference has played a big role. So there is a little bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
But the
also.
big decisions, people who are concerned with those big European decisions, they're all worried.
Yeah. I would also have a maybe more general question that maybe is not only about Bulgaria, but in general, we see in Bulgaria, but also in other European countries, an increasing fragmentation of parliaments.
Yes.
As we also see in Bulgaria now, and again, a new small party managed to get over the 4% threshold.
Yep.
And it is more and more difficult to find majorities in the parliament. And so my question would be, for Bulgaria, but also in general for European countries or for countries in general, what does this trend of this fragmentation of parliaments mean also for the future of democracies and governance, and yeah, for the future of decision making in states and parliaments?
It's a general trend indeed. I was looking at the other day at the composition of the European Parliament and the new families that just sprang up after the European election, and they all lean to the right, radical groupings. There is this, I don't know, is it a cycle, a historic, a political cycle? But this sense of uncertainty, this anxiety, which obviously gets more intensive among the voters, translates itself into a vote which gives more trust, more credibility to leaders, to politicians, of harsher rhetoric, of more catastrophic rhetoric, those who try to induce fear and then say, here I am to resolve your fears and your anxieties. It's very populistic, very populist, but it works. And then and I think there is the big fight now is between democracy and autocracy. We've had this democratic world order for 75 years now, after World War II, and now it's being challenged, probably because of financial crisis, pandemic. Things have happened, to be honest. Things beyond our control, things which we didn't even expect to befall us. And now we are facing the consequences. Migration, I say migration, and I've said it all. So that is an added problem, huge problem, which Europe has not yet known how to resolve. Because the irony here is that we do need migrant population. And at the same time, we don't know how to, or have not yet succeeded to have it properly. No, how should I put it? I'm trying to use a precise term, to have them integrated in a way which won't be antagonistic. The big question is how integratable these people are, this population is. And we know that, again, we don't have just one answer. So it's a whole different skill how to bring in people. But eventually, an aging Europe with such a bad demographic trend, obviously Europe will need workers and just not just workers, but people from other places, from other continents. So, but that's a long time problem. It won't be resolved easily. So all these things coupled together, and when you have somebody who comes and instigates fears about aliens coming over, taking away our jobs, behaving in a hostile fashion or whatever, all this it is propaganda, this one. It holds water. People tend to believe. So it's not an easy time we've entered, and I don't really know how capable we Europeans in all European states will be successful in coping with these issues. But it's again the politicians' responsibility. That's it. It's more education of the voters, more education of the politicians. But tough times are underway, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. Our time for discussion is almost over, so maybe my last question would be just a very short forecast. What do you think? Will there be a government formed, and how long will it last? Maybe when will we have the next Bulgarian elections?
I think there will be a government, and we may have an election next year. I hope it won't be in the spring. If we have to have another one, let it be at least later next year. The earliest would be that. I'm kind of very careful to not to hope for something more durable, because I don't see the makings of it. I don't see the parts of it. Then, of course, something which is another stimulus for those parties to get together is that if they don't do it, then not the 3.99 Velice greatness or the 4 point something match, but somebody else will come over. And we know that if President Radev decides to make a political appearance, to step on the political terrain, he will be a new player. And that will be an entirely different political and who knows, maybe also geopolitical situation. So they realize that, and then they will be out of the game altogether. That's the other thing. So if they want to stay in the game, they also better stay in government.
Thank you very much. That was a nice ending. Thank you very much for this comprehensive and great discussion, for these insights into the current situation and future of Bulgaria. It will be very interesting to follow these developments further. Thank you very much for our speaker. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your insights and for taking your time.
And may I have just 30 more seconds? I
Sure.
want to thank you most sincerely, personally, for taking interest in what's happening here. Because with everything going on, it's very hard to even get the attention of people. So I do appreciate it so very much. And thank you very, very much for giving time yourself to this topic. And please stay the course, stay on.
We will continue. Yeah, we covered all of the past elections in Bulgaria somehow, either with an event or with a briefing. So we will continue doing that in the future too, for sure. And I also want to thank our audience on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained a lot of new insights, just like me. Of course, we have also other discussions on our YouTube channel recorded. We are also happy if you follow us on our social media accounts or subscribe to our newsletter or even become our member. And you find all the information on the IDM website for that. And yeah, thank you again, and see you at one of our next events, either online again or also on site in the premises of the IDM in Vienna. Thank you.
Thank you.